Welcome to Life Stories. What would you do if the person sleeping beside you every night turned out to be the one orchestrating your downfall? This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when love and loyalty are weaponized, when truth becomes a luxury, and survival means letting go of everything you once believed in. In the quiet suburbs of Portland, a man built a perfect life until the woman he trusted most lit the match that burned it to the ground. What follows is a descent into secrets, vengeance, and the cost of becoming your own executioner. But before you decide who the villain really is, stay with us. This one will leave you questioning how well you really know the people you love. Let's begin. The Carrs lived in the kind of house people pause to admire on their morning runs. White columns, perfect lawn, flagstones that gleamed even after rain. On quiet nights you could hear the soft jazz humming from inside, like something from a life people believed still existed. In the upscale suburb of Portland, Oregon, Jason Carr was the man everyone trusted without question. Cybersecurity genius, decorated former intelligence officer. A husband women envied and men respected. He'd built his life like a vault, layered, secure, impenetrable. And Sophie, his wife of 7 years, had been the final lock. She was poised, radiant, always 3 steps ahead in any conversation. The kind of woman who turned heads in boardrooms and silenced rooms with a smile. Her boutique PR firm, Carr & Vale, was booming. They hosted benefits for veterans, galas for orphanages. There were framed magazine articles in the hallway. Top 40 under 40, power couple of the year. But Jason had learned long ago, beauty is the most deceptive form of camouflage. That night, Sophie hummed while unloading groceries. She moved like a woman who had everything she ever wanted: Louboutin heels, Napa wine, and a husband who still brought her coffee in bed. Jason watched her from the hallway, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. There was something in the way her fingers paused over a receipt before folding it too precisely. A calculation, not a gesture. He said nothing. By 3 a.m. she was asleep, or pretending to be. Jason's secure phone pulsed once with a blue glow, illuminating the cold edge of his features. The message was short. Umber protocol breached, ghost data exfiltrated, meet EU600. He stared at the phone for a long moment, his fingers clenched, not from surprise, but from the confirmation. Sophie, she wasn't just hiding something. She was inside. The safe house in Providence was unmarked as usual. Inside, Aaron Briggs was already pacing, flanked by Natalie Harlow, the agency's top forensic analyst. Neither offered small talk. Natalie slid a photo across the table. 3 dead faces stared back at him. Warsaw, Bogota, Tashkent. People Jason had handpicked, mentored, people who had trusted him with their lives. "This isn't a cyber breach," Natalie said, her voice tight. "This is human. Someone with level 7 access is feeding protocols to foreign handlers." Jason said nothing. Briggs leaned forward. "Your wife's firm took on a new client 3 months ago. Lancaster Holdings. Swiss-based, shell layers deep. They've been wiring irregular payments through her PR firm." Natalie tapped her tablet, and Sophie's dossier lit up the screen. "It's not proof," Briggs added. "But it's smoke, and your house is the forest." Jason nodded once. His pulse didn't change. Years of training made sure of that. Later, as he sat in his car outside the agency, parked in the dark like any husband contemplating a fight he didn't want to have, Jason opened a hidden compartment beneath the passenger seat. Inside, an envelope sealed in wax, marked only with a symbol, an I crossed with a single line. A kill protocol. Icarus. He stared at it for a moment, then closed the compartment. He wasn't there yet. Over the next few days, Jason did what he did best: watched, listened, never blinked. He found the second phone in Sophie's office, hidden behind the false wall in her antique filing cabinet, its screen filled with encrypted logs, some routed through IPs in Moscow, some buried in Tor layers. He planted nanocams in her car, scraped her client list, monitored her meetings with Miles Lancaster, British pharmaceutical executive, known donor, former MI6. Every thread led deeper into a shadow web Jason had once helped design. But what cut deepest was the footage he watched one night at 2:14 a.m. Sophie, in the black dress he gave her on their 5th anniversary, standing in a parking garage beside Chai Daniel Reeves, Jason's best friend. godfather to their imaginary children. Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. Jason stared at the screen. Sophie leaned toward Daniel. Her voice was soft. He still suspects nothing. Jason stood in the dark, fists clenched so tight he couldn't feel his fingers. Trust wasn't just broken. It was weaponized. 2 days later he invited Sophie to dinner. Lit candles, ordered from the place where they'd had their first anniversary. She laughed, wore the pearl earrings he gave her. Touched his hand like nothing had changed. Jason smiled, even joked about presenting new cybersecurity tech at an upcoming conference in Boston. Some of it's pretty sensitive, he said casually. Algorithms no one's seen. The agency's banking the future on them. Her eyes flickered, just for a heartbeat. Just enough. That night she kissed him softly, slipped something into his drink. Jason feigned drowsiness, counted breaths until her movements slowed, until she rose from bed and picked the lock to his briefcase with frightening ease. She didn't even hesitate. She photographed fake documents he'd planted just hours earlier. Then she whispered into the burner phone. "It's done. We move tomorrow." Jason watched through barely open eyes, every part of him ice. Tomorrow, he thought, everything breaks. How would you survive if the person who knew all your secrets was your greatest enemy? Could you love someone who built their life on lying to you? Jason Carr is done pretending. And in part 2, he becomes something far more dangerous than betrayed. Unbound. Jason sat alone on the rooftop of a government-owned building in downtown Providence, the wind slicing through his coat like regret through memory. Below, the city thrummed with Friday night illusions. Neon lights, rooftop bars, lovers laughing in taxis. He should have been down there too. With Sophie. Laughing, holding hands, pretending to live. But that version of his life was gone now, dissected under the cold scalpel of betrayal. In his hand, he held a single flash drive. Encrypted, harmless looking. On it, a falsified version of the agency's new encryption protocol. The real one, the one the agency trusted him with, was locked in a black vault 6 levels beneath their secure compound. Jason hadn't just given Sophie bait, he'd built it himself, layered with a false narrative, a ghost trail that would lead whoever received it directly into a digital cul-de-sac. He wasn't done with the game. But he had started to realize, it wasn't just about Sophie or Miles or Daniel. Something deeper had been triggered. Jason didn't know when it started. Maybe it was the second operative's funeral, when he'd stood in the back alone, because he couldn't explain how someone so deeply embedded had been exposed. Maybe it was the look on Sophie's face when she leaned over his unconscious body, her touch still gentle, even as she betrayed him. Or maybe it was the moment he saw himself in the mirror that morning and didn't recognize what was staring back. The agent, the husband, the handler, the hollow. He hadn't told the agency everything about the voice messages he'd intercepted between Sophie and Daniel. The third voice that sometimes joined in, female, measured, with a faint European accent. Always calm, always one step ahead. She had a name now. Veronica Vance. He remembered it because Sophie had said it once in her sleep. Softly, like a confession she didn't know she was making. At 4:16 a.m., a silent alert blinked across Jason's personal surveillance board. Motion detected. Secondary rendezvous point. Sophie was on the move. He watched her through a fiber optic feed, walking into a storage facility in North Portland. She moved with the poise of someone rehearsing a goodbye. Pulled a duffel bag from Unit 314. Inside, cash, passports, a thumbprint-secured phone. She was preparing to disappear. Jason didn't stop her. He had something better planned. Instead, he sent a message to Sophie Carr. Subject: decision. Meet me, one last time. No lies, no weapons, just the truth. He didn't know if she would come, but part of him needed her to. They met in an old greenhouse, shuttered since 1997, overgrown with ivy and secrets. Jason stood at the far end of the glass corridor, backlit by the afternoon sun bleeding through cracked panes. Sophie entered silently. She looked different without the pretense. No heels, no perfect blowout, no carefully rehearsed smile, just Sophie. And for a moment, Jason remembered the first time he saw her, on a hotel rooftop in D.C., holding a glass of bourbon like she owned the world. "You're not here to kill me," she said. "If I were," Jason replied, "you wouldn't have seen me coming." She smiled, sad and tired. So this is it? No. He reached into his coat, slowly, pulled out the flash drive, held it out like an offering. This is what you wanted. She didn't take it. I don't know what I want anymore, she whispered. And that's when it broke. Not the case, not the mission, not the plan. Jason, for the first time, he let it show, the wound. The ache of knowing the one person he had opened his life to had used his love as a weapon. Did you ever love me, he asked, voice rougher than intended. Sophie looked up, tears forming despite herself. Yes, and that's what ruined everything. He didn't flinch. Explain. I was supposed to use you. Get in, extract the intel, disappear. Then Daniel gave me the out, leverage from my old firm, charges that would have buried me. And I said yes. She stepped closer. But then you weren't who I thought you'd be. You weren't a cold analyst. You made me feel safe. You saw me. Jason shook his head. I saw what you wanted me to. No, she whispered. That's what scares me. You saw me, even when I was trying not to exist. He looked at her then. Really looked. Not as an operative, not as an enemy, as someone broken in a different shape than him. I never meant for them to die, she added. I didn't know about the leak to Warsaw or Bogota. That was Veronica's order. Daniel said it was necessary. Necessary? Jason stepped forward, voice rising. They trusted me. They died because I trusted you. Silence echoed. Sophie didn't deny it. Instead, she reached into her jacket, pulled out a small slip of paper. A bank code, foreign, shielded. She handed it to him. What is this? Veronica's contingency account. Every operative she's turned, every contact. You bring her down with that. He took the paper, glanced at it, then burned it in front of her. Why? She gasped. Because I want her to know it's me. Sophie's eyes widened. You're becoming like her, she said softly. Jason looked away, the air thick with unspoken truths. No, he said. She became like me. She just didn't have anything worth protecting. He turned, walking toward the exit. Jason. He stopped. Will you tell them I helped? No, he said. That would make this easier for you. He didn't look back as the glass door shut behind him. What do you think Sophie truly regrets, the betrayal itself, or losing the one man who saw through her armor? And as Jason steps into the shadows of a bigger war, the question remains, can a man hunt monsters without becoming one? The reckoning deepens. Join us in the next chapter as Jason faces the enemy he can't yet name, and the truth he may no longer recognize. It had rained the night before, the kind of rain that soaks into the bones of a city and leaves everything heavier the next day. In a nondescript safehouse outside Munich, Jason Carr stared at the screen in front of him, watching the feed from a security drone circling a private estate nestled in the Bavarian hills. Veronica Vance was inside. He had tracked her for weeks across borders and back channels, through ghost accounts and shell corporations. She was careful, obsessively so. But not invincible, not to someone who had nothing left to lose. Target confirmed, said the voice in his earpiece. Natalie Harlow patched in from Langley. Briggs wants you to wait for extraction. You don't go in alone. Jason didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the woman in the video, elegant, blonde, mid-40s, sipping espresso by the window like she owned the world and all the ghosts in it. She had ordered the kill, not just of his agents, but of everything he had built, his marriage, his trust, his certainty. Veronica had orchestrated the betrayal behind Sophie, behind Daniel, behind everything. He stood slowly, pocketed the custom pistol at his side and switched off the earpiece. He wasn't waiting. Inside the estate, the silence was cathedral-like. Jason moved like shadow, his footsteps silent against marble. 2 guards down, no alarms. Her security was layered for surveillance, not a man who had lived betrayal long enough to wear it like armor. He found her in the library. Bookshelves towered behind her. She didn't flinch when he stepped in. Mr. Carr, she said calmly, closing her book. I was wondering when you'd stop playing chess and simply kick over the board. Jason said nothing. He was staring at her, but he wasn't seeing her. He was seeing Bogota, Warsaw, Sophie's tears, Daniel's corpse, and his own reflection in each of them. You think you're here for justice, Veronica said, rising. But you're here for permission, to become exactly what I always knew you could be. He raised the pistol. No, he said. I came to finish it. You've already lost, she replied. The moment you became personal, you became predictable. That's why Sophie worked, that's why Daniel fell, and that's why I'm still standing. Jason's hand didn't shake, but something in him did. She tried to undo it, he said, voice rough. Gave me your bank codes. Everything. Veronica blinked. Sophie? Her laugh was bitter. Of course she did. She always wanted to be a martyr. You still don't get it, do you? Jason tilted his head. She loved you, Veronica said, but not enough. Not more than survival. None of us do. Jason didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket, not for the gun, but for the device in his inner pocket. A small transmitter. He placed it on her desk. What's that? She asked. Proof, he said, of everything. To the agency, to Interpol, to every ghost you sold out. Her face paled only slightly, but it was enough. I don't need to shoot you, he said. You're already finished. He turned to go, and then, Jason, she called out, her voice suddenly soft. Do you really think you're still one of the good ones? He paused just for a breath. No, he whispered. That's why I'll survive this. And he left her there, alone. In the silence she'd earned. 3 days later, he sat in a federal office in Brussels. The walls were sterile, the air too still. Natalie Harlow placed a folder in front of him. Vance has been taken into custody, she said. Interpol's calling it a multinational win. Jason didn't answer. You did it, she said gently. It's over. But Jason just stared at the blank wall, as if looking through it. Natalie hesitated, then slid another envelope across the table. This one was marked with Jason's name. Her voice lowered. It's from Sophie. Cleared through internal review. She left it before sentencing. Jason took the envelope but didn't open it. Natalie lingered by the door. You could stay, debrief, take a desk position. You've earned that much. But Jason already knew he wouldn't. Not because he didn't want rest, but because he didn't deserve it. The cabin in Maine was quiet that night. No cameras, no satellite feeds, just the fire crackling and the ocean humming against the rocks. Jason finally opened the letter. It was written in Sophie's hand, neat, clean, deliberate. Jason, if you're reading this, you did what you always do. Finished the mission, protected the ones who couldn't protect themselves. You always were the better of us. But if I can ask one last thing of you, it's this. Don't let what happened define what's next. I know what I cost you. I know you may never forgive me. But if there was even one moment you believed in what we had, let that moment survive what came after. Because I loved you, not in the way you deserved, but in the only way I knew how. Goodbye, Jason. He read it twice, then folded it, placed it in the fire, watched it burn, and for the first time in a long while, he let himself feel the weight of everything that had happened, not as an agent, not as a handler, but as a man who had loved, lost, and somehow still survived. He poured himself a drink, looked out the window. Tomorrow, he'd leave again. The world was never short on things that needed fixing, ghosts that needed burying. But tonight, just for this moment, he was still, not healed, but breathing. And sometimes, that was enough. What part of this story moved you the most? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, comment 100 below to let us know. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. And if this story meant something to you, share it with a friend. Thank you for watching Life Stories.